I mean, I would have thought that the Severn Bridge will be shut tomorrow.
Mm.
I would have thought most of the bridges across the country will be shut for safety's sake. I know that a lot of the ferry travel is already under consideration. As I say, we've had problems on the trains already today. Those could be affected. But to be honest, I wouldn't want to be out of my car either. There's just the opportunity for something random to fly through the air and, hit you, making a dent where you don't want it. Hopefully that's, the least of people's problems. But no, when you get winds of this strength, you do not want to be out in that.
Now, Storm Darragh will hit the UK tonight, prompting red weather warnings from the Met Office. Gusts of up to 90 miles an hour will sweep through coastal areas, posing a risk to life and property. Amber and yellow warnings will be in place across the entirety of the UK, threatening widespread travel disruption. Well, let's hear first from Chris Cousins, the RNLI Regional Water Safety Lead, who's joining us from St Asaph. I hope I'm getting that pronounced correctly, on the coast of northern Wales. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
I hope I did get that pronunciation right. But Chris, how are you preparing for the storm?
So we're at the RNLI, we're encouraging anybody who's near the coast or considering visiting the coast this weekend to take extra care while doing so and consider where they go and what they do when they're there, because conditions like we're expecting this weekend during Storm Darragh present significantly higher risk in coastal locations than normal.
I mean, I used to go on holiday in northern Wales, and it is quite a windy, rainy place. How much more than that is this?
It's really rare for a red weather warning to be issued by the Met Office, and that's what we have in place for quite a lot of the Welsh coast, particularly the west and southern areas of Wales, where gusts are expected to reach between 80 and 90 miles an hour, and the Met Office are warning of a risk to life. And what that means at the coast is you have significantly bigger waves and significantly increased risk to people who might be near exposed cliffs, seafronts, piers, that kind of thing, where they might not be used to those conditions in those locations. And while our volunteer lifeboat crews are ready to answer the call should people need to, we're really wanting people to stop and think twice before visiting those coastal locations this weekend.
I'll come back to that in just a second. 90-mile-an-hour winds, though, that qualifies as almost hurricane force, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's certainly extreme conditions. We don't have winds like that in our country very often at all, and those winds create significant differences to the norm at the coastal locations. Like I mentioned, bigger waves, but also there can be storm surges, which means that particularly when the tide is higher on the high tides, areas that aren't normally covered by water, where you're normally safe and dry, can be waves can overtop them, and you can get swept away. So we're really urging people to stay well back from the edges, and probably particularly during the red and amber warnings, consider whether it's a good idea to go to the coast at all.
Well, and that warning to stay back from the edges, I mean, there is always a temptation, isn't there? And it's spectacular scenery in North Wales. People do like to, in situations like this, go and photograph waves and so on. I'm assuming the obvious advice is to stay indoors at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really for the RNLI to tell people to stay indoors. Our advice would be to absolutely take caution. And, we unfortunately in these storm conditions see people who have gone to take photographs or to have a look at the storm who don't expect to get wet, but are like I say, waves come into areas that you wouldn't normally get, and they get washed into the water. So we would advise extra caution. And really importantly is, if you do find yourself in difficulty in the water, float to live. That means relax and try and float on your back. That'll help you get past the effects of cold water shock. If you see somebody else in the water in difficulty this weekend, don't go in to try and rescue them. The best thing to do is to dial 999 and ask for the Coast Guard, who can initiate a professional response.
And what role does the RNLI play in coastal defences and issuing sandbags and so on? Is that something you are involved in?
No, we're not. We are a search and rescue response organisation. So we have very fortunate to have thousands of volunteers right around the UK and Irish coast who carry pages going about their daily lives and are ready to respond in the lifeboats should somebody need assistance at sea. But we're not involved in those other community safety aspects you mentioned.
But inevitably, you're bound to be busy with the search and rescue part of your job. Chris Cousins, thank you very much for joining us. Let's hear now from weather presenter Joe Wheeler to give us the very latest. Joe, good afternoon.
Hello there. Yes, we've certainly got a pretty nasty storm on the way. There are already amber warnings out for many western parts of the UK mainland, parts of Northern Ireland too. And then for the extreme peripheries, a red warning. Now, I haven't seen a red warning since back in January, actually, parts of Scotland. And a red warning means a threat to life. And on this particular occasion, we could be seeing wind gusts in excess of 90 miles per hour. So obviously, those are capable of doing significant structural damage, taking out power lines, causing power cuts, desperate problems on the roads, likely to cancel ferries tomorrow. And we've had disruptions to the rail network already today, but those are likely to continue into the weekend.
Well, it does feel like we've had rather a lot of storms this autumn. Can you give us any sense of whether we've had more and more severe storms than we generally get? Is this, for example, going to be worse than Storm Bert 2 weeks ago?
Well, not necessarily. Bert was a multi-hazard storm in so much as it was running into cold air. So it brought this risk of snow on its leading edge. And I think that was very much the focus of what people heard. Then there was the little bit that we said about, and then Wales and the southwest could see up to a month's worth of rain in 24 hours. And that was rather forgotten. And then, of course, we saw that dramatic flooding. So we've got the winds, we've got the snow, we've got the rain, everything else. This time, so this isn't... It's not a explosive cyclogenesis. It's not a storm that suddenly lost.
Say that again, please.
Do I have to?
You did it so well.
It's not undergone explosive cyclogenesis, is what I said. Which basically means a storm loses 24 millibars in 24 hours. So the center of the storm is deepening very fast. This one is a little more ponderous, but what it does have behind it is a ridge of high pressure trying to build, and that's pushing the ice bars together, increasing the gradient. So in fact, as this rain arrives tonight and it turns windy, you think, gosh, here's Storm Darragh. No, it's not. Wait, until the centre of that storm has passed, that's where we've got the squeeze on the gradient. So at the moment, the red warning runs from 3 in the morning through to 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Now, the good side of that, obviously, is it's going through overnight. So you get less impact when less people are trying to move around. Less people are outside generally, and just hope that the tiles stay on the house and your garden stays where it should be. Fundamentally, those strongest winds are coming through at that time. And of course, these warnings do say try to avoid travel. I mean, I would have thought that the Severn Bridge will be shut tomorrow. I would have thought most of the bridges across the country will be shut for safety's sake. I know that a lot of the ferry travel is already under consideration. As I say, we've had problems on the trains already today. Those could be affected. But to be honest, I wouldn't want to be out of my car either. There's just the opportunity for something random to fly through the air and, hit you, making a dent where you don't want it. Hopefully that's, the least of people's problems. But no, when you get winds of this strength, you do not want to be out in that. And this storm moves across the country, but the strong winds actually stay right through until Sunday morning. So, I mean, this is also a long-lasting storm. Bert was fairly fast and furious, hit, gone, and you dealt with the debris afterwards. This time, I think we're going to be looking at these strong winds right the way through until Sunday.
Right. Well, Joe Wheeler, thank you very much. And I'm now going to be saying explosive cyclogenesis throughout the weekend just to annoy people. So, yeah, do keep a look at the weather forecast. We'll have more to come later in the programme as and when that storm starts to hit. Some messages coming in now on our reaction to our top story this afternoon on Justin Welby apologising for his flippant valedictory speech. Christina says there are something like 10,000 religions in the world. Kick this lot out. Let the others try out. If we really must have a state religion, let them demonstrate their skills, dedication and worth. Welby's handling of this, what a demonstration of corrupt privilege.